Hey barbecue fans, welcome to a beautiful evening on the Frank Ranch. Okay, so today we're going to continue on with our standing rib roast. If you remember last time we opened the standing rib roast, we explained it, we talked about it a little bit. We cut a couple big chunks out of it, we cut some cowboy steaks, and we cut some regular ribeye steaks. So today we're going to go on and we're going to cook this standing rib roast, affectionately called prime rib. We're going to cook this and I'm going to go over the recipe with you guys here. So if you guys try this recipe, I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's a great recipe, a lot of flavor, and I think you'll love it. So I'm just going to dry this off here. Now I've got a vacuum sealer. If you buy a large, or if you buy an entire rib roast, make sure you have a vacuum sealer because you're not going to eat the entire thing at once unless you've got an enormous family, which I don't. So you're going to want to save some pieces of it, cut it, so on and so forth, and vacuum seal it. So that's what I did. I vacuum sealed this. It's been vacuum sealed for a day. I've got the rest of the pieces in the freezer. We'll be doing videos with that later on. All right, so we got our nice rib roast. Let's talk about what we're going to do with this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the bones off the back, and then I'm going to take this compound butter that I got here. Now, compound butter is just mixing all your spices into a butter and softening it so you can rub it on the exterior of whatever you're going to use it on. So in here, I've got thyme, rosemary, roasted garlic, and a little bit of salt and pepper. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the entire roast in the butter. I'm going to put some sage and thyme underneath the bone. Then I'm going to tie it back on with my string, and we're going to add some more salt and pepper to the exterior of it, and then we're going to flash it in the oven. Now I have to do this inside because I can't ramp my smoker past about 350, 400 degrees. That's max for this thing. Otherwise, I risk getting it bursting into flames, catching on fire. So one time's enough for me. We're not going to do it again. Like I said before, it's a design flaw in the version 1 of the Traeger, which they've since fixed. So I'm going to flash this inside in the oven at 500 degrees for 15 minutes. Then I'm going to bring it out here. I'm going to put it in the smoker and I'm going to cook it at 275 until it is rare. So I told you we've got the meter. I picked up the meter thermometer. Now, the reason I did this is because everybody was saying it was a really great tool for barbecue. It is. The algorithm that they use in this thing is fantastic. The only thing I don't like about it, which this goes back to my competition barbecue days, is the thermometer is very fat. So when you cook it, you've got a hole cooked through your piece of meat that big. It's an aesthetic thing, nothing else. If you want to give it a try, great piece of equipment. So let's go ahead and start with this. I'm going to cut the bones off the back. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get my knife and I'm just going to follow the bones. Just follow them right along the back here and take them off. Okay. So now that I've got the bones off the back, I'm going to put a glove on here. I'm going to take some butter. I'm going to smear it on the underside here because this has got all the flavor stuff in it. All right. Okay, then I'm going to pop my herbs open, and I'm just going to lay some whole herbs under here. I'm going to do a little bit of sage. Now you can add more. You'll see people do this. A lot of people have the same recipe. They do the same thing. They use parsley and stuff like that. I'm not a fan of parsley. I think it's a decent spice, but not good enough to put onto a prime rib. Now, I would normally add a lot of rosemary to this, but I've got a lot of rosemary in this butter already, so we don't need to really add any more. If you don't put a lot of rosemary into the butter, then you don't have to do that. Okay, so now we're going to flip this back over, and we're going to continue on covering this roast. Let me get my knife out of the way. I'm going to continue covering this roast in butter. And what this is going to do, you see people using binders. I've said it a bazillion times, I am not a fan of binders. You will never see me rubbing you'll never see me rubbing any type of binder like a mustard or anything like that onto anything I'm cooking unless it's part of the recipe. You know, I don't use binders on any of my meats to make the rub stick. Not a fan. Everybody's like, it doesn't add flavor. Yes, it does. And if you can't tell that, then you need to re-educate your palate. Okay, so now that we've got this all nice and covered in butter, this has all the herbs and spices in it that I've added. I'm going to tie this thing up so the bones stay on. All right, so let me get a nice large piece of string here. All right, so we're going to take this and just slide it right underneath here. I'm going to pull this up. And the reason we do this is just to keep the bones in place while we cook it. And then we're going to take it off and we can eat the bones after the fact. Okay. And please be careful when you're doing this if you're using your knife as a pair of scissors like I just did. It's not advised, but I don't have a pair of scissors on me. I didn't bring one, so it is what it is. We just be very careful. Okay, so let's trim our strings back a little bit. Get rid of those. Let's get rid of these here. That's a sharp knife. We like sharp knives. Okay, now we're going to add a little bit more salt and pepper to the outside here. And what this is going to do is as the roast starts to get hot, the butter is going to melt off and down. And we're going to have all the herbs and spices, everything hanging out beautifully right on top of it where we want it. I'm using a butcher grind pepper. It's more cracked than anything else. And then I'm also using Malden salt because there is nothing better than Malden salt. Until you guys try it, you won't understand, but trust me when I say it is the best. Then I'm going to put that right here in my pan, and we're going to take this inside into the oven because the flashing part is just searing the outside, locking in all the flavors, everything. And then once it's in there for 15 minutes, we're going to bring it out, we're going to put it in the smoker. So we'll be back here in a little bit once we're done searing this thing. Be back in a few. Okay guys, so we flashed our rib in the oven at 500 degrees for 15 minutes. And now instead of giving you a time saying, we're going to cook it at 275 degrees, 15 minutes per pound, we're going to use the meter. I'm going to show you guys how this thing works. So I set up my cook on the meter app. I set it up for a prime rib, rare, and then we're going to go start the cook, and it's going to tell me to insert the probe into the thickest portion of the meat. So the bones are back here. This is the front of the meat, and you probably can't see it. There's a little line on it, so we're going to slide this thing right into the thickest portion of the meat and go a little bit further in just like it says. So it's going to stick out there, and we're going to say start cook. And now it's going to estimate the time for us. Once we get it in, it gets the ambient temperature. So saying the ambient temperature is 59 degrees, it's probably about 50 degrees out here. Internal, our target's 125. I'm sorry, internal is 58, target's 125. So I don't want this sitting out too long. My cooker's all set, ready to go at 275 degrees. So I'm going to put it in here, and we're going to set that down, and we're going to keep an eye on this, and I'll show you guys the algorithm of the meter, which I really like. And when we cut it, I'll show you guys exactly where the hole is, and that's the only thing about the meter I don't like. So we got this thing set up. I'm estimating about an hour to an hour and a half to get to rare temperature where I want. So we'll be back in about that time. See you in a few. Okay guys, here we are at the end of our prime rib cook, and let me tell you, this smells absolutely fantastic. Okay, so as I said, the meter was able to plot the entire cook out for us. And then at the end of it, like you notice I didn't pull it off of the actual cooker itself. I pulled it out of the resting box, the Cambro, because after you're done with the cook, it tells you to rest it. So you rest the meat for a specific amount of time, and then you can cut it, and you've got a fantastic piece of meat. So what I'm doing now is I am cutting off the prime rib itself off of the top of the bones. You'll remember we put the bones underneath it, retied it down. So let's get this over here onto the cutting board. And this smells absolutely amazing. So we set the meter to give us a cook of medium rare. So let's go ahead and take a slice off here. And we can see that is a perfectly cooked medium rare. And this is what I like about the meter, is it gives you a really good sense of where you're at on the cook. The algorithms are great. The only thing I don't like about it, which harkens back to my competition days is it leaves a hole in the meat where you cooked it. It's in there further. We can see it at a later date, but that's the only thing I like about it. It's a great tool. I've showed you guys exactly how to make a fantastic piece of meat, so I'm hoping you guys can go out and get yourself a nice standing rib roast, cook it up for Christmas, and enjoy it. So there you have it, guys. Until next time, keep on smoking it.